If your blood sugar is still high, even though you have already cut the sugar, even though you are eating less, even though you are doing what you were told, then stop. Stop right there because what I am about to share with you is the part that almost nobody explains. And it might be the exact reason your numbers have not changed. Not a little, not at all. Now, I want you to do something for me right now. Think about how you felt this morning. Were you heavy, foggy, still tired even after a full night of sleep? Did you wake up and feel like your body never really rested? That feeling, that specific feeling, is not random. It is not just aging, and it is not something you simply have to accept. There is a reason it keeps happening. And by the time this video is over, you are going to understand exactly what that reason is. My name is Dr. Megan Foster. I have spent over 2 decades working directly with patients dealing with insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. And in that time, I have seen one mistake made over and over again by patients, by well-meaning friends and family, and honestly, even by some doctors who just do not have the time to go deeper. That mistake is this believing that blood sugar is only about sugar intake. It is not. And that misunderstanding is costing people real progress. I have patients who cut sugar dramatically, completely rearranged their diets, gave up things they genuinely loved, and their blood sugar barely moved. Because the real issue was never just the sugar they were eating. The real issue is something deeper, something more fundamental, and that is how the body responds to glucose in the first place. That response is controlled by systems that most advice completely ignores. And today we are going to talk about those systems clearly, practically, and in a way that actually makes sense. Think back a few years. You could eat the same meals and not feel this way. No crashes in the afternoon. No strange fog sitting behind your eyes. No energy dips that hit you out of nowhere 2 hours after lunch. You felt steady, and now something has shifted. You eat, and within a few hours something feels off. That shift did not happen overnight, but it also did not happen without a reason. And here's what I want you to hold on to right now. This is not something you were destined for. This is not simply what getting older looks like. Your body did not break. It adapted. It responded to repeated signals that were sent to it day after day over months and years. And because it adapted once, it can adapt again. But only, and I want to be clear about this, only if you start targeting the right mechanisms. So, let me give you a simple picture of what is actually happening inside your body. And I promise I am going to keep this plain and straightforward. Think of your bloodstream like a highway. Glucose, the sugar that comes from the food you eat, is the traffic moving along that highway. Insulin is the signal system. It tells the traffic where to exit, where to go, where to get used. In a healthy system, that all runs smoothly. Traffic flows. Exits are clear. Energy gets delivered where it needs to go. But in someone with insulin resistance, it is as if the exits are blocked. The traffic and the glucose keep circulating. It builds up. It creates pressure in the system, and the body, trying to compensate, sends more and more insulin to force things through, but the exits are still blocked, so the glucose stays elevated and the pressure keeps building. Now, here is where most people go wrong. They try to reduce the traffic, and they eat less sugar, fewer carbs, smaller meals, and yes, that helps a little. But if the exits are still blocked, you are just solving half the problem. This video is about reopening those exits. It is about addressing the underlying system, not just the surface number. And this is not theory. Large-scale research from institutions like the Harvard Tschan School of Public Health has consistently shown that it is not any single dietary change that drives meaningful improvement in how the body handles blood sugar. It is the combination of daily behaviors, small, consistent compounding habits that produces the biggest shift in insulin sensitivity over time. We are talking studies with thousands of participants tracked over years, and the finding keeps showing up the same way. It is the pattern that matters, not the one perfect meal. There is something else I want you to understand before we get into the habits themselves. Most people think of blood sugar as simply a number, something that goes up when you eat and comes down later. But what that number actually represents is a conversation happening between dozens of systems in your body simultaneously. Your liver, your pancreas, your muscle cells, your fat cells, your gut bacteria, your brain, your stress hormones, all of them are constantly exchanging signals. All of them are influencing what that number does. And all of them are influenced by the daily choices you make, often in ways that are completely invisible until something starts going wrong. That is what makes this condition both frustrating and genuinely hopeful. Frustrating because there is no single fix. Hopeful because there are multiple entry points. multiple places where you can intervene, and every small change you make is adding a new signal to a system that is always listening. So, in this video, I am going to walk you through 5 daily habits in a specific order that directly improve how your body handles blood sugar. And I want to tell you right now, the last one on this list is the one most people overlook entirely. It is also the one that affects your blood sugar even while you are sleeping. So, stay with me all the way through, and as we go through this, I want to ask you something. Which one of these do you feel like you have been missing? Drop it in the comments. It genuinely helps surface what people are experiencing, and it helps more people find this information. Let us start with number 5. Most people assume that morning blood sugar is only about what they ate the night before. That thinking is incomplete, and it leaves out a factor that is operating in the background every single morning before you have even opened your eyes. That factor is hydration. When you wake up, your body has been without water for 6, 7, sometimes 8 or more hours. You have been breathing all night. You have been regulating your body temperature. Your organs have been doing repair and maintenance work, and all of that uses water. So, by the time you open your eyes, you are already in a mild state of dehydration. Even if you do not feel thirsty, here is something important most people do not know about thirst. By the time you actually feel thirsty, your body is already 1 to 2% dehydrated. That sounds small, but at that level, your blood has already thickened slightly. Your kidneys are already working harder to conserve fluid, and the hormonal changes that accompany dehydration are already underway. Thirst is not an early warning signal, it is a late one. Here is why that matters so directly for blood sugar. When the volume of fluid in your blood decreases, the concentration of everything in that blood increases, including glucose. The same amount of glucose that was circulating in your system the night before is now sitting in less fluid, so the concentration reads higher. Your morning reading can be elevated simply because your blood is more concentrated, not because your body produced or absorbed more glucose overnight, but it goes beyond concentration. Dehydration triggers the release of a hormone called vasopressin, also sometimes called ADH or antidiuretic hormone. Vasopressin tells the kidneys to hold on to water. But this hormone also directly signals the liver to produce and release more glucose into the bloodstream. So mild dehydration is triggering glucose production at the hormonal level, completely independent of what you have eaten. And then there is cortisol on top of that. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone, and dehydration is one of its triggers. Cortisol also signals the liver to release stored glucose. So you wake up mildly dehydrated. Vasopressin rises. Cortisol rises, and both hormones are telling the liver to push glucose into the bloodstream, all before you have eaten a single thing. So you wake up, you have not eaten anything, and your blood sugar is already being pushed upward by at least 2 separate hormonal pathways, not because of food, because of water, or the lack of it. Research has consistently shown that hydration status influences glucose regulation and insulin response. It is not a dramatic effect in isolation, but layered into a full day of choices. It sets the tone for everything that follows. The practical application here is simple. Before you do anything else in the morning, before coffee, before checking your phone, before eating, drink water. Not a sip, a full glass, or ideally 2. Give your body the fluid it needs to normalize blood concentration and ease that early hormonal response. The most common mistake I see here is people going straight to coffee first thing in the morning. Coffee is a mild diuretic, meaning it signals the kidneys to release more fluid in the urine. If you are already mildly dehydrated from overnight and the first thing you do is drink something that pulls more fluid out of your system, you are compounding the problem before the day has even started. Have your water first, then have your coffee if you want it. There is also an important connection between hydration and insulin sensitivity at the cellular level that most people never hear about. When cells are properly hydrated, the cell membrane is more fluid and functional. The receptor sites on the cell surface, the ones that insulin needs to bind to in order to do its job, work more efficiently when the cell is well hydrated. Research has associated mild chronic dehydration with reduced cellular insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells become slightly less responsive to insulin, not because of diet or genetics, but simply because they are not getting enough water consistently. This is a subtle effect on its own, but over weeks and months of habitual mild dehydration, it contributes to the overall pattern of resistance. Does it matter what kind of water? Plain water works perfectly well. You do not need expensive mineral water or anything specially filtered to get this benefit. If you want to add a slice of lemon or a small pinch of sea salt for taste, that is fine. What matters is the volume and the timing. There is also the question of how much water total throughout the day. General guidance is around 8 glasses or roughly 2 liters for most adults, though individual needs vary based on body size, activity level, and climate. The morning glass is not a replacement for staying hydrated through the day. It is the foundation. Make sure you are also drinking water with meals and throughout the afternoon. Dehydration that accumulates across the day creates that same blood concentration and hormonal disruption in the evening, setting up difficult overnight conditions before you even get to bed. Hydration alone is not going to reverse insulin resistance, but it removes a variable that is working against you every single morning before the day has even started. Once you add water first thing and do it consistently, you are starting each day with one less obstacle in front of you. But hydration manages concentration and early hormonal stress response. It does not change what happens in your body after you eat your first meal of the day. And that is where we need to go next. Let us talk about breakfast. Specifically, what most people are doing wrong at breakfast and why it sets off a chain reaction that affects blood sugar for the rest of the day. Most traditional breakfast foods are built around carbohydrates. Toast, cereal, oatmeal, fruit, pastries, juice, even things marketed as healthy. Granola, certain yogurts, smoothies are often very high in fast-digesting carbohydrates. The problem is that when you eat a high-carbohydrate meal first thing in the morning, your blood sugar rises sharply and quickly. Your pancreas responds by releasing a surge of insulin. And because those carbohydrates digest fast, glucose floods into the bloodstream faster than the system can manage smoothly, you get a spike. Then when the insulin overshoots, you get a drop. And that drop is what you feel as low energy, brain fog, irritability, and renewed cravings 2 to 3 hours after eating. And most people, when they feel that crash, reach for more carbohydrates, another coffee, a snack, something sweet. And the cycle repeats every single day. And each repetition puts additional cumulative strain on the insulin system, gradually deepening resistance over time. Now, starting your breakfast with protein changes this entire sequence. Here is how. Protein activates the release of a hormone called GLP-1. You may have heard this name recently, since it is the same hormone that newer diabetes and weight medications are designed to mimic. GLP-1 does several important things. It slows the rate at which food moves from your stomach into the small intestine. It signals the pancreas to release insulin in a more measured, gradual way, and it communicates to the brain that you are full and satisfied. All three of those effects are exactly what someone managing blood sugar needs at the start of the day. But there's a second hormone worth understanding here, and it is one that almost nobody brings up in the context of breakfast. It is called glucagon. Glucagon is also released by the pancreas. But instead of lowering blood sugar like insulin does, glucagon signals the liver to release stored glucose. It raises blood sugar, and protein stimulates glucagon release at the same time it stimulates insulin release. Now that might sound counterintuitive at first. If protein raises glucagon and glucagon raises blood sugar, why is protein good for blood sugar control? The answer is in the balance. When both insulin and glucagon are released together in response to protein, the two hormones counterbalance each other and create a much more stable, even metabolic response, far less swing in either direction. Compare that to a high-carbohydrate breakfast, which spikes insulin sharply without the same glucagon balance, and you get a much more volatile blood sugar. Protein creates hormonal balance. Carbohydrates alone create hormonal chaos. When you eat protein first, even before other foods in that same meal, you change the hormonal environment that your digestion happens inside of. The result is a slower, more gradual release of glucose into the bloodstream. No sharp spike, no sharp crash, steady, manageable energy that can carry through the entire morning. Clinical research consistently shows that higher protein breakfasts reduce post-meal glucose spikes significantly compared to high-carbohydrate breakfasts. Not by a small margin, significantly. Now, the practical application, you do not need to overthink this. Eggs, Greek yogurt with low sugar, cottage cheese, smoked fish, even a protein shake if that is convenient for you. The key is that protein is the foundation of the meal, not an afterthought. The most common mistake is pairing protein with high-sugar foods. Eggs with orange juice, yogurt loaded with fruit and honey, a protein bar that is actually half sugar. The protein is there, but it is being overwhelmed by the fast carbohydrate load. Pay attention to what you are combining, not just what individual components are present, and the order matters more than people realize. Research on meal sequencing, the order in which different foods are eaten within a single meal, has shown measurable differences in post-meal blood sugar based purely on eating sequence with total food intake held identical. Same meal, different order, meaningfully different result. Eating protein first gives your body a chance to set up the right hormonal environment before the glucose load arrives. Eating carbohydrates first removes that advantage entirely. Some people say they are not hungry in the morning. That is fine. The goal is not to force down a large breakfast. Even a smaller protein-focused option, 2 eggs, a few spoonfuls of Greek yogurt, a modest amount of cottage cheese is significantly better than starting with fast carbohydrates, or skipping breakfast entirely and allowing blood sugar to swing freely for the first several hours of the day. The protein at every meal principle is worth extending beyond breakfast. When you anchor each meal with protein, even a modest amount, you change the rate at which carbohydrates in that meal are digested and absorbed. You slow the whole process down. But breakfast is where most people are most deficient in protein and where the early morning hormonal environment makes the effect most pronounced. But even the most well-constructed breakfast cannot fully override what happens with carbohydrates later in the day, because most people are eating carbs at lunch, at dinner, for snacks. And how those carbohydrates are prepared makes a significant difference that almost no one is talking about. This brings us to habit number 3. And this one surprises most people when they first hear it because it involves something they are probably already eating, just prepared slightly differently. The concept is called resistant starch, and it is one of the more practically useful nutritional discoveries of the last several decades. Here's the background. When you cook carbohydrates, rice, potatoes, pasta, oats, the starch molecules in them absorb water and swell. Scientists call this gelatinization. In this state, the starched granules are open and accessible, making them very easy and fast for your digestive enzymes to break down. The result is quick digestion and a fast rise in blood sugar after eating. But something structurally important changes when those cooked carbohydrates are cooled down. As they cool in the refrigerator over several hours,